Albert K. Shell is a former professor here at Clark Atlanta University. I think you came to Clark Atlanta University in 2014, and I am doing this off the cuff. So tell me I don't know this man, right? Did you start 2014?
Well, mid-year 2013, but 2014 is my first full year. So yep.
Okay, we're gonna go with that.
Yes,
And then
yes.
you've been a school counselor, worked
Yes.
in school counseling. Would your graduate, are you from Clemson? I know you like to wear that.
Undergrad. I know no more after we lost to Duke, so I don't rep my Clemson anymore.
I like it. I like it. I like it. Well, I think he brings a wealth of knowledge. And the reason why I think he's such an amazing person to get our first training started is because Dr. Ken Shell and I collaborated. And that's how we actually got this fellowship started. It was in 2020. I think we were in the midst of the COVID situation. The call came out. And one of the things that Dr. Shell kind of presented to me that I thought was really an amazing point was like, I don't know if y'all remember because it was so long ago, but it wasn't that long ago. But like when the pandemic first happened and the vaccine came out, there was this huge discussion on whether or not people wanted to get the vaccine. And one of the things that I think Dr. Shell and I really recognized was that with African Americans, we may have a little bit more apprehension around certain things because we do have the Henrietta Lacks stories. We do have the stories about experiments and things that may not have always gone in our favor. And so we really thought that if we have, and research shows, the more Black behavioral health specialists that you have around a client, a consumer, and a community, it really helps everyone to be able to cause or bring up more prevention. So that was one of the real reasons why we wanted to bring this to the table. And then I think for counselors and social work, I think it's always important to really recognize who your allies are. So it's important to not always see people as like, well, this person does this or this person does that. But like really, if you think about your community, you'll see where everybody has a purpose at the table and how we can all bring something together. So I think you got something you want to add, some Tajin to that, Dr. Giddens?
I would add that, first of all, he's a very good person to know.
Sure.
When he was in our department, every time I had to introduce him, I always referred to him as my joy box. You simply cannot have a bad day around Dr. Shell. But academically, I would say that he is extremely astute. He reads a lot. He loves to write proposals, manuscripts. He has more manuscripts than most people I know. He presents a lot. He's a professional conference presenter, and he's a magnet in the classroom. So he's an excellent, excellent exemplary teacher. He brought something to our department that he and I were just bouncing around as ideas. You know how you just talk about ideas, but you don't really do anything? Well, he took it a step further and we initiated our very first journal for our department has its own professional peer-reviewed journal, of which he is the editor. And so we've got to pick it up and run with it because when he left, we were so brokenhearted, we just couldn't do anything with it. But we know where he is. He's doing an outstanding job because he was just, I would say, the bloodline for our department for many, many years. Have a cooperative spirit. You might want to think about that in your internship. He has a very cooperative spirit. He's a professional collaborator, and he knows those counseling theories backwards and forwards. I mean, he has me beat on that. I still have to read those. But so I'm not trying to be overly braggadocious, but I just want you all to understand, we don't just have another person here to talk to you today. This is to us a very famous and precious and extremely extraordinary individual that's presented to you today. So take heed.
All right. So I think without further ado, let's get the party started. You are the co-host, Dr. Shell.
All right.
You let us know what you need from us. And then as Ms. Campbell said, we want you all to be as engaged as possible and participate. Make this thing go.
Well, look,
all
now
right.
I don't want to speak now to those introductions. I feel like I needed to stop. Thank you both. I appreciate it. But as Dr. Jones was saying, like we are in the groundwork, we're down the ground floor for this because we just thought you know, counseling and social work at Clark have interesting histories and long histories, but they hadn't collaborated a lot. But we do a lot of similar things. We're like cousins, and we're like, well, why don't we do something together? And Dr. Jones and I had such good rapport outside of that. And so we're like, well, let's do this together. So this is how this came about, really. And so I'm glad it has come full circle. It's still going. We have a new cohort. It's good to see how it's moving, doing yoga and everything else. So, and I'm really happy to be your kickoff presenter. So I'll just start. Please interrupt me at any time. You could drop stuff in the chat. I'll try to look at the chat as well if you have questions. So, I don't want to just talk at you, although I'll just be talking at you. so interrupt me at any time, and then but we'll start right now, I hope. And then Nelson, this is where my age shows, because then it's going to take me a while to get the background going. So I'll be like, talk amongst yourselves as I act like I know what I'm doing. All right, so we call this first one just reducing health disparities in underserved communities via interprofessional collaboration. And again, we thought about all the work that needs to go into having good, healthy Black communities, and that there's no one discipline that could do this all by themselves, right? And so we at Clark Atlanta had social work and we had counseling. We're like, let's see what we can do together to help make mental health more accessible and better for Black folks and Black communities. So I'm glad to be here again. And then just because, but you don't need me to read that. I'll give you a little bit more about my background, even though you've heard a lot. So now I feel like I'm bragging, but I'm not trying to brag. I just want to let you know my background, my pronouns, he, him, his. This is a little bit of my educational background, just in case you want to see it. Clemson University, University of Georgia, former high school counselor, former college access coordinator, former career counselor. Former counselor educator at Clark Atlanta. I still miss you all. I'm currently a practicing mental health counselor too, private practice, all virtual, and currently work at Central Connecticut State University as an assistant professor. But through all that stops, not like I'm bragging, it's been about collaboration every step of the way. As a school counselor, many of you going into the field know we have to collaborate with teachers, we collaborate with principals, we collaborate with special educators. So I couldn't get my job done if I didn't collaborate with other professionals. As a counselor educator, you hear Dr. Jones talking, I couldn't have done it without Dr. Giddings, Dr. Jones, and then other people across the campus that we work with to help make things go. Oh, there was somebody coming to the room. I was like, is that a comment in the chat? All right, yes. All right.
No, I'm sorry. We got
no, I love it. No. I was like, oh, they're chatting already. I love it. And so, but it's just, so that kind of informed my background. There's no way for me to get stuff done without collaborating. So when we saw this grant and we thought about let's collaborate because it just made sense, one, but all my professional background really involved collaboration.
Keep going.
All right. I just like the reverb. I was like, is it me reverbing? This is a little bit about how I think about teaching and research and everything else. So, but you'll see my head's in the way for part of it. So let me move. But really what we do here really is a part of how I think about preparing counselor educators, preparing future workers, mental health workers in the field, thinking about, again, anti-racist policy, thinking about interprofessional collaboration, thinking about multicultural and social justice competencies, and thinking about oppression and privilege and how it shows up and works against many of us as we try to do this work. And so that's just a little bit about my background before we get started. Any questions for me before we go on? Any questions you have about me before we go on?
What does the E stand for?
Oh, Lord, Jessica, I'm going to fight you in the streets. It stands for Albert. That's my government name. Albert Mackenzie Shell, but it was my dad's name. So I always think about him when I think about that name and not me, even though it is my name too. So
Keep the legacy going.
Yeah. Now that I'm older, though, it fits me. I was a young person with that name. You know, I didn't love it. But now that I'm old, I guess I can be Albert and be happy. So thank you, Jessica. Thank you. All right. These are just a little bit of our learning objectives. We'll go over the 4 competency areas of interprofessional collaboration and behavioral health. We'll talk about the competencies within an interdisciplinary team, and then we'll discuss the gifts and challenges of doing this work that you may already know because you're in your practicum, well, you're in the internship year, your final year. So you've probably seen it in practicum and how it works and doesn't work for you in your space. And so we'll talk about that as well. But first, we'll do some background, because our professions really do emphasize interprofessional learning and interprofessional collaboration. So you're on the cutting edge. You're getting what people wish they had. Many programs do not do this already. So Dr. Jones and Dr. Giddings are really, and Mrs. Campbell are really preparing you better than many practitioners who are leaving their master's degree programs, because they kind of get some in their internship year, but they don't have an intense focus on this. And you get an intense focus on this. It's going to prepare you to be good practitioners. And I think it'll also help you in the job market as you go out and talk about all the trainings and all the things you do this year and all the things you learn. All right, so this is just for the Council on Social Work Education, the EPAS standards 2022, right? But you could read some of it outside of my head. Social workers understand the value of evidence derived from interprofessional and diverse research methods, approaches, and resources. You understand the roles of other professionals when engaged in interprofessional collaboration. Social workers use the principles of interprofessional collaboration to facilitate engagement with clients, constituencies, and other professionals as appropriate. And so you can just see it's all throughout your language of how you should be trained as a social worker anyway. So you got this. Dr. Jones and Dr. Jones, Dr. Jenny Jones got you set up to be well-rounded social work practitioners. You know, again, applied theories of human behavior, culture responsive interprofessional conceptual frameworks. So you just see it's all throughout the way you should be trained as a social worker. So you're learning on the cutting edge again, and just being here at CAU is giving you that extra kind of zest. Again, you see, boom, it's just all throughout the competencies, all throughout. And then for my counseling folks, you're probably like, well, what about us? What about us? You're not left out yet. There's some 2024 standards. I know I didn't pull them yet. That means I need to do a little more research, and I've seen them, but I just didn't have the heart to do a search. So I just went back to the 2016 standards for a minute. But you can see for your counseling colleagues as well, the CACREP, the Council for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Programs, emphasizes this as well, and the things that how we need to train counselors. So again, you're on cutting edge, and it's within our frameworks for how we want to train, the standards for how we want to train practitioners, but every program doesn't emphasize this. I promise you. I'm in a program right now. Guess what they don't emphasize yet? Interprofessional collaboration. So guess who's going to have to kind of infuse it in there in addition to all the other things we want to infuse in there? So I might not be long for that world. Let me just tell you. So we'll see. But and there's some more standards that come with CACREP as well. Consultation, as you see, as strategies for interfacing. And so again, you're learning all the skills you need to be really well-rounded practitioners to do this work. Also, part of what you need for this is, I mean, part of it is the ethical obligation as well. So I'm just pulling up from social work. There's some for counseling too, but again, I was a little lazy, so I didn't add it. So my counseling folks, you know, you got my heart, but I just couldn't go to our standards and look. But I went right to the social workers and pulled it up. So you can see, but part of it, again, is an ethical requirement for you to do this and do this well. All right. Any questions about how you need to be trained to do this and how you need to think about it ethically? And I'll send this to you too, so you can have it. Yes, thank you, Mrs. Campbell. I meant to send it in advance so you can have it too. So, all right. So let's talk about the meat of the matter that Dr. Jones talked about when we were setting it up. The last couple of years have been real hard, as you've seen, really, really, really hard for Black folks. I mean, it's been hard across the United States, period, but it's been really hard for Black folks. I mean, many of you were there, sheltering in place, pandemic, we had the insurrection. And I don't know how you felt about it, but when I saw a lot of the Confederate flags and all these white folks, and we had a few folks of color, it really didn't sit well in my soul, right? I felt like it was really anti-Black, but they weren't saying anti-Blackness, but it felt real anti-Black, right? And so I don't know how that impacted you, but it really did hit me hard. I was a little anxious. I was like, this country hates us, which I knew already, but I just had proof in my bones, right? we know the pandemic was hard, period, but also our communities really suffered a lot of grief and loss. We had a really high death rate compared to many other communities. And the way our systems are set up, the minute we stop sheltering in place, it's time to move on. Let's get going. We got to get back. We got to reclaim our time. We got to go back to being in person, all those things. We never had a lot of time to process our grief and loss, especially for us Black folks, you know, and other minoritized folks. We honor and celebrate death in the different ways. And because of the pandemic, we weren't really able to do some of our traditions. And so it just sat there, and it's still a lot of unprocessed stuff. And I want to say, outside of the grief from death and loss, there's a lot of grief from just loss of tradition, right? Loss of the things that we knew. A lot of graduations, people who were first gen didn't get to have their first college graduations, the sadness that they kind of sat with them. They didn't get to have their first high school graduations. They didn't go to proms. All the things that they missed out on just sat there, and nobody ever got to sit with them and process it. So we have a lot of folks now who are carrying a lot of grief, a lot of loss, a lot of sadness is unprocessed because our society says, let's just go on. We don't have time to think about that. We got to move on. That's in the past. And so that's why it's important that you're doing this training, do this work in our communities, because you'll be able to identify this with your clients and our coworkers to say, hey, breathe. It's been a hard, stressful time. That's not your water to carry. This has been imposed upon us. You get to be sad. You don't have to be strong. You don't have to be the strong Black woman. You don't have to be John Henry. You get to sit with it, right? And that's going to be one of our strengths, I hope. But it's going to be coming through the pipes. You'll see it in the school systems. You'll see it in all the systems where people are coming. There's a lot of unprocessed sadness and grief that shows up. And the longer it shows up unprocessed, it's probably going to turn into trauma. And so we'll be having a trauma response from all this as well. The other big thing, and I'm sorry if this triggers you, but you know, when I was trained, Black folks we didn't really think about suicide for Black folks and death by suicide as much because it wasn't a Black thing. Suicide rates are decreasing for all Americans except Black Americans right now for the first time. So our suicide rates are going up, death by suicide, suicide attempts, and they're going down for mostly everyone else. And because we haven't really studied it before, because again, when we were trained, nobody talked about the signs for Black folks, what really the stresses for Black folks. Then we're still learning, what do we need to know to help do suicide prevention in Black communities, right? It's been shocking to a lot of folks. And so we don't know. And so we have a lot of lanes for research, for practice that you may have seen that works, that I hope you can put it out there for research, because we need your ideas and your thoughts about this, because there's not, I think it's within the last couple of years, there's an idea about Black suicidology, but there wasn't a lot of research about it because we didn't think Black folks died by suicide. So also, what's continuing and still going, police violence in our communities for men, women, Black folks with disabilities, Black trans folks. We're disproportionately impacted by police violence, and it doesn't seem to be ending no matter what. We saw what happened with George Floyd, the summer of racial reckoning, Breonna Taylor. We thought we'd get some relief. It still keeps going, and it still keeps going, and it hasn't stopped. And for those of you who are around Metro Atlanta, you've heard all the discussions around Cop City. And should we have a training facility here when we need more housing? We need all these other things, but we're going to invest money in Cop City. So you see this, just how hard it is for our Black communities and Black spaces and all the pain and grief that we carry. Other things as well, some of the aftermath from the sheltering in place, people are having, they're being unhoused. We're having a hard time with food insecurity. So it's just, whew. And I don't mean to paint doom and gloom, right? Because Black folks have a lot of resiliency, and I hate that word, but we have a lot of resources. We've lived through slavery. We lived through Jim Crow. We have the resources to do this, but also there's a lot compounding right now. And our society as a whole doesn't seem to be really focusing energy towards Black folks. And so it looks like it's going to be from us, by us. And that's why Clark Atlanta is such a gift. That's why this program is such a gift, because we get to direct the energies and the monies towards the things that matter to us, and not just to generalize, you know, the way it's always been. And I sound like a bigot, but it's always been about the white folks and what they needed. And we get to focus towards what do Black communities need, and how do we use our resources to help it be better for Black folks. And also, you know, we know this, and you've seen this. But they just did surveys for Black folks, and this is what we're seeing: unconscious bias, racism, discrimination. These are the things that have really been personal obstacles for Black folks. Historic wealth gaps. And we've talked about trying to generate or improve generational wealth and how that looks. And even when we try, how we have the Tulsa things happening, we have all the other things happening. So all the things in this country have really seemed to try to work against us in a lot of ways. So, and the last thing for my gloom and doom, and I'm going to get off the gloom and doom, right? We just have co-occurring disorders happening at high rates in Black communities as well, right? Mental illness, substance use disorders. 2.3 million Black adults age 18 and older had co-occurring substance use disorders and mental illness, right? Nearly 2 in 5 Black young adults age 18 to 25 had this. So, and we know we don't have enough infrastructure to support all the Black folks who are coming to get help. Well, we do, but it doesn't look like, it doesn't show up in ways that really make sense for a lot of Black folks, right? It's really white-centered, Eurocentric, the way we think about healing, the way we think about even recruiting, the way we think about retention for clients. And so that's why you all are so important. I'm so glad that you're coming into this field. We need you. We need your ideas. We need your energy, right? But I also want to say, as I think about this, period, you're needed. But also, and I don't want to be like representation, hashtag representation matters, right? But it can't just all be about representation. We have to do some work in our fields. Thankfully, like you're at CAU, so you get a lot of Afrocentric perspective, but generally social workers out there in the rest of the world are getting inundated with whiteness. Counselors out there in the rest of the world are getting inundated with whiteness. Our theories are white. Our ways of thinking about professionalism are white. Right? And we reinforce that and kind of, again, thinking about how it impacts our clients, our potential clients, and why they don't come. And we'll say that there's a stigma about mental health around Black folks, but then we're like, but our professions haven't always been welcoming and kind to Black folks who come, right? And so here we are. And that's why it's so important that you're here. I'm so glad to see you all, right? But you're going to be essential in our fight. And I hate to put this pressure on you now because it's enough that you're trying to earn money, pay back your student loans, all that stuff. And then we're getting you to go out there and be like, oh, we're going to have to get you to revolutionize the field because it's just hard. As you know, you've seen it. And we need more of you. TikTok is helping. That's, you know. I love TikTok. I don't know if it's helping, but I've seen a lot of people doing this. So I just say this too, you're really needed. People are going to TikTok to get their mental health stuff, right? And some of the stuff you've seen is dicey, but outside of that, it's just there's their hunger for it right now. We've seen Taraji P. Henson's foundation. We've seen athletes from Naomi Osaka to Serena Williams. We've heard Jay-Z talk about mental illness and how it's impacted him. We've heard of other hip hop artists. So Black folks are talking about it and they're coming. And they need us to be there. They need more of us, but also we need our professions because there are not enough of us. We know that it's going to take a long time. We need our professions to really turn around and be welcoming to Black folks, right? We need our white peers, our Asian peers, our Latina peers to be able to do this work in a similar ways the way we're going to be doing it too, right? And vice versa. We need to be able to do it for them too, but we definitely need it because we have a lot of anti-Blackness in this country and it shows up in the mental health system as well. So here we are, structural inequities, police violence, COVID-19 pandemic, the clarion call for mental health that we're seeing in our communities and the value we're placing on it. We just need more of you doing this work, just more. So it's going to be, as you think about going out there in the field, not only are you going to be doing this work and getting your money and getting your student loans repaid and forgiven, amen, I say, but also recruiting more people to come behind us to do this work because we need more Black folks doing this. So as you go talk, and I know it's hard at Clark, it's expensive, and sometimes you want to complain, and you get to complain. That's your real experience. But also encourage your peers out there to come do this work. Just tell them about the benefits of being able to become mental health practitioners because we have to proselytize. Because again, what I'm learning is that many Black folks don't think this is a job that's viable for them. They don't know. They don't know a lot of Black mental health practitioners. If they have experiences with social workers, for instance, I'm going to use this, but I don't think this about social workers. They think about their children being taken away. They think about all these other things. And so they don't think that I can become a social worker and actually help in other ways, right? They just know the experiences that they've heard. Or if they think about counseling, they think, I ain't crazy. Why would I need to go see a counselor? And so you get to be the benefit of going out and saying, you can go see a mental health person without having crisis. You can go just when you feel off balance. You can go just to talk to somebody outside of your family who won't be gossiping about you, right? And so your work is going to be twofold: making your bread. We need you to make your coin. So I'm here for that, but also proselytizing about why more people need to enter this field. So if you got friends who like to listen and talk, please send them to Clark and say, hey, have you thought about this MSW program? Have you thought about the MA and counselor ed? Because we need you. And right now we're turning money and attention towards it. So there are ways to be reimbursed, right? There are ways to be reimbursed, I'll tell you. And as you get licensed, you get all these letters behind your name. We talk about this a lot. It's not, I mean, I do this for the goodness of my heart, but also, I mean, I like having the extra coin. And so doing this work as well can be beneficial for you. And you know that you're being trained. Any questions about that? And thank you. Yes, an entryway to the actual process. Yes, I miss all y'all. I want to be back in a Black space. I miss you all.
And you see the notes in the chat, they miss you. They're affirming what you said. And I think Mr. Keonis also said something. Let me see. I got to scroll up. He says you were clarifying the clarion. Is that right? Is that a real word?
That is a real word. You know, Mr. to Dr. Quinones is like the big SAT words. I love it. That's why he's going to be doing that TEDx. He's a bomb.
Yes. The clarion around the necessity of what we're doing today. These statistics energize our focus. So thank you for the information. Not doom and gloom to me. All right, keep going.
I want to say that, and we'll talk about this as we keep going too, because I don't want to make it all doom and gloom. Again, we as Black communities and Black folks know how to manage heartache, disappointment, oppression. We've lived through it. We lived through it before we had mental health practitioners. We have some cultural practices that help us. So I hope by the time we're done, I emphasize that as well. So after we take our break, I'll make sure I really emphasize that too, because I just want to say, but this is why you all are needed, because I'm working in a space that's not Black now, and I realize that the white practitioners who are coming through don't think about this. They just think, oh, if I do some Freud, if I do some CBT, I'm gonna help the Black folks, some cognitive behavioral therapy, and we know differently and better. And that's why I'm so glad you're coming in. And I hope that you think about that as you're getting your theories and your perspectives as well, that you think about how I can modify this for Black spaces and Black communities, because we need you. Now, I'll go back a little bit about representation matters, because it does. But I want to say again, just because we Black don't mean we can do this work, right? You have to train yourself to do this as well. So we say this all the time, not from CAU, because I know we all skin folk and kinfolk, but not all skin folk and kinfolk. So we have to think about where we are on our ladder of, again, our racial identity development and those kind of things as well. And so if you believe in Black liberation, right, we just can't do it. You have to be all in on Black liberation in a way. And I know this sounds controversial, right? So we think about intersectionality big. So we have to be really fighting against the challenges that people who have disability in Black have, the people around sexuality in Blackness have, trans issues, you know, culture, age, how does it look for older Black folks and younger Black folks? All those kind of things as well. Ethnicity. So we have folks who are Black, but actually come from Nigeria, who come from Jamaica, who are, and so we think about ethnicity and those things as well, and class, because I get a sense oftentimes, not here in this space, but working around Black folks with money, it seems to be like we hate poor Black folks. I don't know if it's because it reminds us of what could be or where we've been or those kind of things, but really trying to make sure that we honor how class shows up in these discussions too, and not just demonizing people for poverty, and not saying that you could do better if you want to do better. Sometimes that is some cultural factors too. So, but also thinking about intersectionality, because again, Black liberation is going to require us to lift all of us up. We can't leave anybody behind as we think about this work and how we want to do this work and help impact our communities. The other thing is, as you know, we talked about it, our professions just haven't been welcoming to Black folks all the time, right? Discrimination, the expense of therapy, the stigma that comes with it, the screening process, how we think about setting up our locations. I mean, telehealth has helped a lot for some of this, the power imbalance for our therapists, the wait list, because there are not enough Black therapists and we're trying to come to Black folks. And the white therapists sometimes are harmful, and we're trying to work with them too. The other thing is, you know, our professions, this is more information on how our professions just haven't been welcome into, you know, these are 2 audit studies, and they just had Black folks come in with different names, or they have different profiles set up, and they have somebody read it as they're Black or as they're lower class. And what we're seeing is that counselors not even calling them back, or practitioners are not calling them back if they think they're poor and Black, or if they have a Black sounding name, ethnic sounding name. So you're going to be fighting all the stigma in addition to trying to do good work, in addition to trying to earn money, because we have to, I want it to not be your sole responsibility. I want our profession to really, our professions to step up to the mat and do what it needs to do. But also, we get more of us in here, I think we're going to turn the ship and help right it, because it's hard. It's hard. And also, as you all know, you're at Clark, and this is what I love. We speak the same language here. Anti-Blackness is baked into our professions in a lot of ways, and we have to really fight to get it out. And I forgot to put a citation for this. I'll get it to you, so I'm so sorry. There's an article that I took this from, and I know it's a little harder to read, but it's just really the racism is the basis for a lot of our diagnoses that we're seeing, our overdiagnoses. For those of you in school systems, you see that Black children get oppositional defiant disorder a lot, right? Conduct disorder a lot, and that seems to send them right into the school to prison pipeline. We've had over diagnosis of schizophrenia for Black men for a long time. And it's just because racism, right? Basically, they changed the diagnosing criteria. We got fewer people diagnosed. Go figure, right? Or if you go way back, drapetomania, right? When Black enslaved people were trying to escape, they called it a mental health disorder. So our systems have been complicit in anti-Blackness. It's kind of baked in there. So so again, representation does matter. It's going to do a lot, but we have to do a lot of work to really fight the systems in which our professions have been trained. So when you get out there, you'll see it. I mean, I've been in conferences, I've been in the listservs, and just hearing how practitioners who I thought would be good and kind to Black folks are really espousing, they sound like Fox News to me. I was like, why are you in this field? And I hope no Black person comes to you. They're like, we could do it. We could do it. I don't think they can. And the other thing is too, a lot of our theories, a lot of the things we think about don't dig deep enough, right? So social workers were a little ahead of us, a lot ahead of us in this area. So thinking about systemically what's happening to impact mental health. Counseling is coming around to the fold as well. I mean, our roots in counseling were really individualistic because we have a psychology kind of education base, but we're really thinking about how does racism, discrimination, misogyny, you know, mass incarceration, how does that impact our mental health? And so one of your gifts being at Clark and being in these programs is that you'll think this already. But what I'm learning is that most of our professional colleagues don't. And so you get to show up differently in so many ways, because to them, it's like, I'm gonna give you the CBT, you can learn how to cope. But I'm also thinking, well, if the person's unhoused, cognitive behavioral therapy is not going to do a lot. We're going to really think about housing. But also, as we think about housing, we have to think about housing policy, because y'all are down in Atlanta. You know how expensive it is. Woo! I mean, that drove me to buy a house in the hood because I couldn't pay rent in Atlanta. And I love my house in the hood, though. So don't let me, but I couldn't afford the rent. So I had to go. But just think about all the ways that they're intersected to the ways we think about mental health. And so you're going to be thinking big picture, and I mean, you're going to have the skills to think individual and macro level as you think about this stuff, because it's going to take individually working with our clients, but also trying to think about how do we change the systems around to make it better. Again, there's no point of helping them cope if they're going right back into the pain and trauma, the stuff that traumatized them and hurt them in the first place, if that's going to still be existing. But also, I say that we also have ways that we've been able to cope. And so your gift is going to be being able to incorporate our indigenous ways of healing and coping, right? I think about we joke with Dr. Jones and I, even when we were trying to write this grant, the stress of it, but we were having a good time, laughing, playing music. You know, Dr. Jones is good for throwing out some hip hop lyrics, getting it going. And so the cookouts, all the ways that Black folks have celebrated being alive in the midst of oppression, right? How we've reclaimed joy. And so that's going to be another part of you in this practice, helping your clients, helping our communities reclaim joy with all the gloom and doom, because we have done it. We have survived. We have made it through slavery. We have made it through Jim Crow. We made it through mass incarceration with our joy, our smile. We have a cookouts. We gonna dance. House in the Park this past weekend. If I were in Atlanta, I would have been at House in the Park getting my dance on. Even in the midst of everything else, we gonna find some joy, right? And so I do that even with my private practice clients. I do a lot of Black existentialism, but a lot of my work is how do you find joy in the midst of all the things that are happening? What are the things that bring you joy? Let's help reconnect you to those things. And that's going to be one of your gifts as well. And also, as we talk about this too, at some point, right? And I'm all about telling people to go get therapy because that's how we get paid. That's how we get paid, Lord. And that's why you're in school. But at some point, we got to go figure out why so many people need therapy, right? Again, we got to help build the bridge that keeps the people from falling in. And this is a Desmond Tutu quote from South Africa, you know, and I love Archbishop Desmond Tutu because he had hope in the midst of apartheid and everything else as well. But there does come a time when we have to think about how do we help people. Therapy is important. And again, I want you to get paid, but also some of the ways we get paid are trying to go in and change the systems. And so as you think about this and as we go through the programs, figuring out ways that you could get in where you fit in. All of us can't march, and that's not going to be your lane, but it may be research. It may be hashtag activism. So on your social media, you're out there. It might be writing letters to politicians. It may be speaking on mental health in your communities and churches and synagogues and mosques, right? But going in and talking about how we can go change so that less people need to come to therapy and we can use our gifts and skills in other places. But right now they need you, so you can't do all that. So I want you to get paid, right? But that's going to be part of the things you're doing. And social work is ahead of us for this again, for counseling. Counseling is moving in this direction as well. But social workers already think systemically and how do we change systems to help the person in the environment, those kind of things. Counseling is coming along. We've been coming along slowly and steadily, but we're coming along to be in line with social work where it comes to this as well. The other thing is the social determinants of mental health, right? Again, this goes right in line with all that. Are people housed? Do they have food? Right? How are their neighborhoods? Is there a lot of violence in their neighborhoods? Are there public parks in the neighborhoods? Are there libraries that they can go to for free? Right? Is there green space? Are they being excluded from their green spaces? Those kind of things. What kind of early life experiences do they have? Is there racism and discrimination hidden them? What are the government policies that impact them? So all these things go into how we think about our treatment planning, our case conceptualization. So again, kind of like I'm trying to stay away from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, although we all know it, because I just learned recently that he stole that from indigenous folks and took it as his own. So, so I'm trying not to use it, but if we're going to use it, because we bring it into education, all that stuff, but it came from indigenous folks. So go look it up. I promise. I'm going to put the research in here. So I'm trying not to give him credit anymore. I want to give the indigenous folks credit, but I know Dr. Jones, I'm there too. But as we think about it, right, and you think about the person in their context and their whole environment, if we're doing treatment planning and case conceptualization, if we're not thinking about all of this, our treatment plan is going to be trash. We have to think about what's happening in their environment that's impacting their mental health. What's their water to carry and what's being imposed on them by society, right? And I'll give you some like specific examples. I don't have many women clients, but I have a few. But after the Roe v. Wade overturn, every time this session, I just checked in. It may not have impacted any of them. Some of them may have been happy about it, actually. But I checked in because I knew a lot of women were struggling after that moment of, and so just checking in because that's something that's imposing some anxiety and stress from the outside. It's not, it still impacts you, but it's not your water to carry. It's not an individual failing, right? Whenever there's police violence against Black folks, I check in with my Black clients. And one of the first things I do, how you doing? You know, I just saw there's another killing. How are you managing? How's your family? How's everybody doing? Because again, that's some stress that's being imposed on us from the outside. That's not my personal stress that I just cooked up, right? And so thinking about what's happening in our communities. and being able to bring that to our counseling sessions and the ways we think about, again, case conceptualization, the ways we think about policy to help our clients, the ways we work with our clients and on behalf of our clients to help make things better. So you'll hear me talking about that a lot. Yes, Dr. Jones, you're the bomb. That's why you're such a good practitioner. See, just check it. It's hard. It is hard. And, you know, so again, the social determinants of health, I think about of mental health, thinking about, again, how laws and policies impact our, let me move my head, our medical interventions and how we provide clinical care. So cultural competency does matter. I'm not saying it doesn't, but also we have to think about all these other things that impact the way our clients are showing up and our communities show up for us and the struggles they're having. Yeah. But also I want to think, I don't want to minimize culture. I want to minimize it sometimes for how we think about doing our work. I don't want to minimize it for our clients, because culture does matter as far as how they think about healing, how they think about growth, how they think about help seeking, all those things as well. So I want to be making that happen. Yes. I love it, Dr. Jones. I don't want to preempt all that either. You're going to get a more detailed one about it, but I've been in that space with the social determinants of mental health a lot as I think about how the trained practitioners do this work. I really think about a lot. And the other thing I want to say too, this is a CDC pyramid. I want you to, because you're learning counseling and education, right? But as you look at this pyramid, and I added mental health, this is just for health, but the mental part of me just creating stuff. What do you notice? What do you wonder? Yes, Jessica.
So the largest impact has to do with poverty, like you said. Housing is a big factor, but the least impact has to do with physical education classes. Like I love PE and everything, but I didn't really much learn from it. And most of the times I really felt like school was an institution and not more so like something that'll help me in my future. So it's let's like focus less on training kids, I feel, and more so on what do people actually need to get their lives started and better.
Yeah. And thank you for that. You make a very good point. And so that's the whole thing. And so a lot of our training programs really emphasize the counseling and education, and we need it. So I don't mean to make it sound like get rid of that. That's not trash, right? But what I am saying is that it's a both and, right? We're going to have to do our counseling and education, and also realize the biggest change happens when we work on socioeconomic factors. It's no way that counselors and social workers can work on socioeconomic factors by themselves. It's just no way, right? So it's going to require some interprofessional collaboration. You're going to have to work with doctors and nurses and psychiatrists, right? They are doctors, public health practitioners, lawyers, lawmakers, policymakers, right? You might have to become a policymaker to help make some of these things go. So you're going to be doing both. But again, it's important that we do the counseling and education because it's needed. We have to teach skills and coping and all that stuff. But also, if we're not also working on socioeconomic factors, what are we doing? What are we really doing? But you can't do that all by yourself, right? So that's, again, I don't want to give you that sense that you got to do both. It's really, that's why it's important that you're going to be thinking about your work as collaborative, because you're going to work in the top pyramid a lot, but also trying to figure out how do we get socioeconomic factors to change for our clients and our communities so that, again, the fewer of them need to come to therapy in the ways that they come to therapy now. They can just come for booster shots and to talk because they need somebody that's caring that can listen rather than crisis driving them to us, if that makes sense. Almost time for a break. Almost, I promise. And so this is just the point, as well as directing people to cope with their social burdens, then we remove some of these rocks to take it off their back. Right. So therapy is important. Again, I feel like I'm beating you over the head with it. I'm gonna be like, so I want you to think both and as you do your practice and you go out there. It's gonna be, how do I help this person learn coping skills and manage and learn to emotionally regulate? but also how do I help society and remove some of the burdens that are causing our clients to emotionally dysregulate? Because some of the dysregulation, again, is not because they are personal failings that they can't manage, that they're weak, they have pathologies, because society sucks. And you know, you've been out there, housing costs, food costs, right? Job insecurity, just so many things. We're getting rid of. So when I was first being trained, we had retirement packages. Now it's 401ks and 503 and all these other things, and they're tied to the market. When the market crashes, our retirement fund crashes. Lord, I've never been so anxious. And every time they think there's going to be a crash, I get anxious. Like, can I ever retire? I'm like, you know, I'm so jealous of Dr. G, who retired once already and decided to come back and work. I was like, will I ever be able to retire? Because every time the market takes a tank, my retirement funds go right down, and I'm afraid to play in the market, you know, all those other things. But there's so many stressors out there that are not about my ability to be strong. They're about, that's being imposed on me from outside. And so one of your gifts is going to be able to talk to your clients about this. When you see it, when they come up in your therapy space, when they come into your practice, to be able to say, to talk about, hey, it's hard out there. I would be stressed as well, and this stresses me out in these ways. That appropriate self-disclosure that you talk about in your classes, right? That I'm not surprised you're stressed about this, because whew, it's hard. So any thoughts about social determinants of mental health? And we'll go to our next section, then we'll take a little break, and then we'll come back.
Right now, good morning again, Dr. Shell. Good morning again, everybody. Right now at my internship with Embark, I'm seeing the impact of just society on these younger individuals. It's like they have literal addictions to TikTok, and without some sort of validation that comes through one of their other TikTokers, they throw temper tantrums, but then it's also a distraction from the stress that their parents are undergoing. I see it. And what it's doing for me is it does make me appreciate the reality of the intercollaboration taking place regarding social work. If I did not have the exposure, I'd be like, what in the world is this? How does this impact counseling? But Clark Atlanta has truly given me that ability to say, I get it. It's the outside imposing within. So I'm so grateful that you're sharing with us what it is, because they can grow into adults that still may remain unhealthily constrained by societal delusion, I would say. So thank you for that.
Love that. Oh, look at this in the chat. Come on, Miss Brantley. Diagnosed as someone who can barely make ends meet in a job they hate is what made me question the psychology field. Of course, they have anxiety or depression symptoms. People can't be well in survival mode. It's not the person who is sick, it's the culture. Amen. Amen. And that's basically what I'm trying to say. I mean, people need help, right? I'm not trying to minimize that. We do need to help our folks learn how to cope in appropriate ways without succumbing to violence and some of the other things as well. But also, we can't penalize them for trying to survive in this society that's imposing all these things on them, right? We have to think like, I'm trying to survive too. And so I've had to do some things I might not be proud of to survive. And so, right. So it's not exactly pathology necessarily. So you get to bring that lens. And this is why I think representation matters in this way. You bring that lens to our black clients and our black communities, because guess who's not bringing that lens? The rest of the profession. So they're thinking there's something wrong with black culture. There's something wrong with black people. Why black people so violent? Why black people like this? Why black people can't manage their money? Why black people can't do those things? They pathologize as they think deficit. I see strengths in our community. I see the strengths and gifts from our communities, the way we find joy, the way our community, the ways we save each other from rent parties. Y'all not old enough to remember rent parties, but that was pre-GoFundMe. If you ever watch an old episode of Good Times, having a rent party, how we rally as a community to get stuff paid and done, right? So that's one of our strengths. And so leaning into our community strengths, and so not you succumbing to the narrative that's out there about how black folks can't do nothing, because we can't succumb to that because we're different, right? So we have to fight that. What are you about to say, Dr. Joe?
I'm ready to bring a rent party back to that. Like we always on a mission. That was a good party, right?
Yes.
I didn't think I was old till you said that, but I'm officially an auntie, because Yeah, REM parties was where it was at. That was a true example of strength-based, Dr. Shell. A perfect example of strength-based.
I love it. We've done it so much, right? I'm going to put something in because it's going to be hard for you to read. I'm going to talk about one thing and then we're going to take a break and then we'll come back. This is a SHARP framework that I like using now, and it's from a Black woman, PhD social worker, but I use it in my counseling work now too. But I want to give you a copy that you can see better than what I'm going to project because so basically I cut and pasted from a research article. So anyway, I could have redone it, but it's not going to, I didn't. So I'm going to put it in the chat right now, and then we'll talk about it a little bit, and then we'll do a little case study for you to think about it, and then we're going to take a break. Let me find it first. All right. And hopefully it's a PowerPoint. It's like 6 slides in the chat. So if you want to open it and follow along, I hope you can all see it. Did it show up? Did I send it yet? No. All right. Now I sent it because I'm an old man. Now I just sent it. Hopefully you can download it and open it up. And we're going to talk about a SHARP framework for a moment and go through it. And then we'll do an activity. And it's a case study you're going to see all the time. So we're going to use it twice, but we'll use the case study to talk about a SHARP framework as well. So hopefully you can read it better in your computers and your phones and what you're going to be seeing projected. But as I think about doing this work a lot, I think about the SHARP framework. And again, Black woman, PhD, social worker. So you see interprofessional collaboration. I do interdisciplinary stuff because it made sense to me. And I was like, oh, this fits the way I think about it. So if we think about structural oppression when your clients come in, what are the issues impacting the person? Is there access to all the systems necessary for their quality of life? And then what's their historical context? What historical issues? Have there been policies of anti-Blackness in the school district? Have there been policies of anti-Blackness in this community that are impacting them? Have there been policies that have been anti-woman? How has environmental history contributed to where the person is now? And then what's your role? Are you going to be flipping tables, or are you going to be the status quo, right? Because there's no, by her framework, in which I like, there's no neutral. You're either part of the status quo or you're helping to make change. And then reciprocity and mutuality. What are the strengths and gifts that the person can share with others? Because part of our liberation for our clients is also helping them to use their gifts to impact their community. It's not just us working on them, it's also unleashing their gifts in their communities as well. Now, how do we help them? How do we identify and how do we help them to turn around and use it in their community space? And then what's their role? What power do they have? How can they use their power to impact the structures? So this again is hard to read. I'm sorry, that's why I'm gonna send it to you. Because again, I'm gonna be real. I cut and pasted from a research article. So if you have it in the one I sent and download it, hopefully you can make it look better. But just thinking about this stuff, is a person impacted, just reading through the lingering effects of housing discrimination, inadequate access to decent, affordable housing, inadequate, efficient transportation to job centers. And you know this with MARTA and all the other things in Atlanta. Like if it's not on the line, if it's not on the bus line, if it's not on the train, right? It's going to be hard for them to get the jobs. If they have to go to Buckhead, my house is in the SWATs in Southwest Atlanta. I had many of the young people there having to take MARTA up to Buckhead where the money was and the jobs were. And so if they had to take buses and trains, sometimes it took hours for them to get to work. Right? Lack of access to decent jobs for returning citizens, unfair, undignified policing and criminal justice policies, inequitable access to quality education. Lord have mercy, right? Lack of access to service and support systems. Now, it may be better, but you know, the area around Clark Atlanta is called the Bluff. There were no community mental health centers around the Bluff. Now there are some. Future Dr. Quinones. All right. So they opened one because at one point there was none. And I was like, you know, this is a space that Clark Atlanta can fill because we have the programs and everything else. But they had all gone. They were part of the South Atlanta and North Atlanta. We had nothing. And so just think about, how do people go get their mental health care? What private practices are around there, et cetera, et cetera. Healthy, affordable food. And then the lawmakers who are interested in meeting community needs, et cetera, et cetera. So you see that. So I'm not going to read it all to you. I just want you to see, but for you, thinking about, again, the complex nature of environmental issues impacting a person's ability to be successful. That many of the barriers that people face are results of racist, oppressive policies and practices in the larger environment, right? So you get to name it and tame it. It doesn't make the problems go away for our clients, our communities, but also it gives them a name. And oftentimes if people can name it, they can tame it. They can take it away and not think it's their own personal failing. And that's part of the gift that you'll have as Black practitioners doing this work, being able to help them know that they're not pathologized themselves. They're not all bad. Society has been putting a hurt on them, and this is their natural way of trying to cope with it. And sometimes it's worked well, sometimes it hasn't, but I'm not going to penalize them for trying to survive with all this going against them, right? All right. Here's some historical context. Racist housing practices such as block busting, redlining, predatory lending, racial steering, slum clearance, isolating public housing, gentrification, right? My neighborhood is gentrifying now. I need to sell my house actually so I can buy up here. So sadly, I'm going to be part of the problem. I can't be a landlord though, because the way my bank account is set up, I can't have 2 mortgages and a student loan that's about to resume in just a few weeks. So
You don't think Joey B gonna push it back again?
oh, Lord, I keep getting these emails about, hey, let's think about your payment options. So, oh no.
Right.
So the way that's set up, I'm gonna have to let go of my house, but in a good way though. I'm trying to sell it, but because my neighborhood is hopping, I'm sure some white person's about to buy my house. So my neighborhood's going to be gentrifying, sadly, you know, sadly. But just thinking about how that looks for many people. Many Black folks can't buy. Their systems are not set up for that. There are no affordable housing policies in many places. You know, in Atlanta, in Georgia, it's a state law. There can't be rent control. So rents can go as high as people need it. And where do the Black folks get to live? Or the people that don't have money, right? Because the Black folks with money get to live where they want still. I know that. But the folks that don't have as much access to that, where do they get to live? And how does that impact where they go to school? How does it impact their access to services? So again, I can't blame them if they have to live in a certain area and the school that they're zoned for is not great. And everybody's saying, why don't you go to another school? I was like, where are they supposed to live? How are they supposed to get to the school? Where's the transportation? How's all the other stuff? Why can't we just make their school where they're zoned for better? But anyway, that's a whole different story. So you get to think about that as well. What's the historical context for what your clients are going through? The next area is your role. Will you be a maintainer of the status quo and work within work with the system to continue oppressive practices, or will you flip the tables? Disrupt. And I say that in a way, disrupting tables, I'm not playing in your pockets, right? And I know, like I'm joking about, I got student loan resumption, payments resumption. So I'm not saying do stuff that's going to make you get fired, not by any means, but figuring out how do you get to disrupt. It could just be going in and looking at the policies. Maybe more people could access services if we're using Medicaid in this way, and we'll be able to do that. Maybe more people could access services if we had an office in this place. All right, I know Nelson's a disruptor. I already knew that. And you got a big voice, and I'm glad because you use it. And I always appreciate that. And thinking about that. So, you know, because a lot of us we go along to get along, and it makes it easy. And I get that because I want to keep my job too. But I was joking before it come with Dr. Jones, how I have to think about curricular changes in my new space because stuff that I took for granted at Clark Atlanta, this new space is not doing. And so I'm a but one. So if nobody else is thinking about it, then the Black person has to do it. So that means it's going to come with some arrows and slings coming at me because people are not going to like the change. But that's a hill I'm willing to die on because I just think it's important. We can't have the status quo to do this work because too many people get left behind or they get poorly served, misdiagnosed, pushed out of the system, not getting what they deserve as humans in the system, right? All right. The other one, reciprocity and mutuality. How does the provider send a message that the person is whole, capable, and worthy of self-determination, regardless of their presenting issues? So how are we honoring this human in front of us and not reducing them to just a list of the challenges and problems they have? Now, both of our programs do this. Social work and counseling are like, look at the full human, but oftentimes we get out there in the workforce, it's just like, you know, she bipolar, right? You know, they borderline, and you know how borderlines are, right? And we forget about the humanness and all the other issues that come along with that, right? They're just not their diagnosis. They're just not their set of problems. And so we have to think about that as well. Where are biases that show up when we see this? How are we putting them in check? How are we honoring the humanity of the person that's showing up in front of us, right? And how do we, again, look at the structural issues that come with them and the historical issues that may be impacting their ability to do the service? And then the last one, power. Got the power. What can a person do alone or with others to change the impact of historical and structural oppression, right? And so a lot of our training has been about you doing that as the practitioner, right? But also we get to work in community with our clients in our community. So it's not about us making all the changes by ourselves. That's why it's important to think about collaboration. How do they get to go back and use their gifts and their strengths to go back and change it and make it better for other people who are struggling or with issues that are similar to theirs, right? And so again, it's a lot. I'm not trying to impose this on you, but I think about this as well. Like our clients, again, come from traditions. They come from healing traditions. They come from traditions that have fought off against slavery, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, right? Medical systems who treat them poorly. We're seeing that now as far as Black women's maternal mortality rates and all that kind of stuff. But still women are rallying, Black folks are rallying to try to fix stuff. How do we tap into their ability to fix stuff instead of saying, you know, I get a sense from my days in the school district, like families would come with some kind of advocacy, but because it wasn't in the way that we liked, we poo-poo it. Like, y'all don't know, I'm educated better. Right? What kind of advocacy is that? Let's beat that out of them and get some other stuff. But also they have ways of knowing and gifts that come from their communities. And how do we incorporate that into their treatment planning, into our case conceptualization, into the way we think about operating change in their communities? And so again, that's a sharp framework. This comes from Dr. Shaya, Black woman, social worker, love her to pieces. I use this now. This has been part of my framework as well. Just thinking about, again, honoring the ways people show up in their humanity and their culture and their indigenous ways of healing and making change and making sure we treatment plan with that in mind. And Black folks come with a lot of gifts. We have a lot of challenges, but we come with so many gifts. And how do we honor that? And how do we think about it as we conceptualize what's happening in their lives? Whew. Yes, Lord. All right. So we're going to practice really fast. I'm not going to divide you into groups for practice. We're just going to do a little practice for you to think about SHARP. And I'll go back and forth as we think about it. But I want you to read this little case study. And we're going to use her again, this case study. It's about Mary. And I know it's hard to read with my head in a way. She's a 62-year-old African-American woman who lives in Atlanta and presents a myriad of symptoms, including type 2 diabetes, glaucoma, high blood pressure, lower back pain, and depression. Mary takes over 15 medications to control and treat those symptoms. She repeatedly visits psychiatric emergency services due to chronic anxiety about an ex-boyfriend intending to harm her and about her only daughter abandoning her. Mary lives in subsidized housing, receives government-funded food assistance, and does not have her driver's license, so she relies entirely on public transportation, MARTA. Mary also has primary custody of her daughter's son, her grandson, and his grades and behaviors at school have worsened. She has recently connected with the local community mental health services run by the county. All right, so this is Mary, first part of our case study. So everybody got that? I should have sent this to you too. So, but can you remember that? We'll come back to her too. So remember Mary really fast. Now I want you to think about, and this is hard to read, but what kind of structural oppressions may be impacting Mary's life as you think about everything? So structural oppression, what issues are impacting the person? Is there access to systems necessary for quality life? So structural oppression, what do you think is showing up for Mary?
I would start by saying her.
I'll go. Oh, who's going? I'm sorry. I saw Christina and then I saw Jessica.
Oh, we got a couple people. I'm excited.
One of the first things that came to mind for me was maybe she was in the food desert, depending on her area because of her diabetes and her high blood pressure. So not having quality access to grocery stores, healthy food options. But I won't keep going because I want to share.
You can keep going, Ms. Bradley. I appreciate that. I saw Shaquala. Is it Shaquala? Did I pronounce it right? Shaquala?
Dr. Shell, you've been knowing me all these years.
Oh, Shaq.
Yes,
I didn't even see that. You spell your name like that? How did I not know that? My bad, Shaq. Sorry, boo. I didn't know that's how you spelled your name. I'm about to go on mute now. I'm embarrassed. All right.
Okay. We digress. Another thing that popped up for me was that she was on 15 different medications. Who's her healthcare practitioner? Who's her doctor that makes it? Because how many different reactions is her body having to all of these different medications that could be causing her to be unhealthier in a mental health space and a physical space? And I'll be quiet, like Christina said, and let someone else go.
Thank you, Shaq.
I'll say that, and hello, to piggyback off of what was just said, the fact that she's having to use emergency room to go to the emergency room to even receive any sort of health care, is an issue. And I'll also share as well.
Naya or Nia?
Naya.
Naya. Thank you, Naya. I'm trying to make sure I get everybody's name right. Miss Jenkins.
That's how she say it.
Hey, that's me. Good morning, everybody. One thing I was just going to piggyback off of, I know that she said that she doesn't have a driver's license, and with her having to go to the emergency room so often, is there like viable transportation that's not the MARTA? Also, because I know like some services, they'll send vans, or like there'll be a van service that can come, and especially since she has like a lot of health issues and she also has a child that she's taking care of. So public transportation may not always be like the best option for her. So is there like a van or something that can come get her, things of that nature?
Oh, thank you. Look, I like calling you, everybody with the last name Jenkins, I like to be like Jenkins, but I'm sorry, Miss Jenkins. I know you've heard that all your life, probably.
I have.
Better not nobody say anything bad about Miss Jenkins. Nobody. Who else? I see Michelle. There are two other, who else? I saw Michelle and Katie and anyone else I'm missing, but either one of you can go.
So I'm looking at all the medications that she's taking, and sometimes when you go to a doctor, and if you're not familiar, or you're kind of just taking the medications as they give it to you, and nobody's really looking into why she's depressed or why she's anxious. It's just like, okay, well, she's anxious, give her something else. Well, she's depressed, give her something else. Some of this pain and anxiety and depression, and nobody's asking her about her personal life, the stress of having to take on her grandson, the pressures of probably just the food is, is it enough food? Does she get enough funds to even take care of her and the grandson? So I think it's sometimes we have clients that we find that are on a lot of medication just because nobody ever really did the whole biopsychosocial to see, can some of this, medication be taken away, because we really haven't looked into the deeper issues of what's going on with her.
Look, all right for bringing in your turns, biopsychosocial. Come on now. I love it. But that's true. Like, what kind of collaboration are the healthcare providers doing? So that why would she have 15 medications, right? Thank you. Katie.
So honestly, this looks like two cases to me. Like we see Mary, but also like the grandson. So he's got his own set of problems. And in terms of like Blackfoot's hierarchy, I guess, like are his basic needs getting met? And there's that why we're seeing behavioral issues that he may need addressed in school. So he may need assessment. He's going to need some behavioral aid or, therapy to process through those problems. Also, is he stable? What's sleep hygiene look like? Diet? If she's always in the hospital for like emergency psychiatric needs, like where is he going? Where's mom in this picture at all? Like where's the caseworker? Those things need to be involved. So
look at you bringing in all the sleep, everything else, cha-ching. And then how do you pronounce? I want to make sure, is it Chanel or Chanel?
It's Chanel.
Chanel. I messed it up all the way. Sorry, Chanel. Okay.
No, it's okay. My commentary literally mirrors what Katie just said. Just making sure the grandson's needs are being met, having given that he's probably dealing with trauma of his mom not being there, and making sure he has maybe an IEP in place at the school. So literally the same commentary as what Katie just mentioned.
Y'all are the bomb. I want to throw, before we go to the next one, I want to throw one other thing out there too. And you've seen it repeatedly too, and I want it as an oppression. But Black women in general, but you see that she has an ex-boyfriend intending to harm her. What do we know about women in general, and what do we know about Black women who report domestic interpersonal violence and they make reports of it? What generally happens?
It's not taken seriously.
It's not taken seriously. So that's a structural thing. That's the issue. So that could be why our anxiety continues as well, because we know that women aren't believed, and we know Black women definitely aren't believed at high rates. And that's a structural thing that we have to try to change. Thank you all. All right. I put myself on mute. I lost my mind. Let's go to the next part. Historical context. And I'll scroll back so we get. What historical issues impacted her environment possibly, and how has this environmental history contributed to where she may be now? All right, I'll go back to Mary. So what historical issues may be impacting?
So I know for me, what came to mind was the list of things she was dealing with. So the type 2 diabetes, the glaucoma, the high blood pressure, lower back pain, and the depression. One could assume those 4 led up to the 5th, but just the timeline and when these were occurred or when they were diagnosed, and seeing how that possibly could have been attached to her emotional stability at that time or her resilience level. Just that's the most thing that pops out to me, just because there's so many things she's dealing with on top of the issues with her partner. So just trying to get a timeline on that and seeing how long, because she's 62 years living in Atlanta with all these different stressors. That's something to take in consideration.
Thank you for that. That is true. The timeline for that, 62, right? And also, I'll throw this in there. You're saying that, and I hope I'm not preempting anybody else, but many Black folks struggle under these same kind of conditions as we get older. And a lot of people blame diet for that and those kind of things. But also we're seeing that diabetes, high blood pressure, depression are related to chronic stress, and racism is a chronic stress. And so that's one of the historical things that may come with it as well. I mean, we can't get rid of the racism, but also we could help point out that this is some chronic stress. So we could do some other stuff like yoga, mindfulness to help de-stress, even though the racism is still going to be there. But to point it out, like, it's not that you're bad, Mary, you're a Black woman, you didn't eat right, and here we are. Let's just say racism causes some of this, and here's how some of the ways we can kind of lessen it a little bit. Thank you for pointing it out, Ms. Vines. You're the truth. Anybody else want to bring out anything from historical?
I would like to, Dr. Shell. I think what's blaring here is the subsidized housing for me. Undoubtedly, the neighborhood, the environment is inevitably imposing on her. It's got to use this word, excuse my English, it's ghetto. And so along with that, the fear of just coming home, having to use public transportation, that fight or flight response that's constantly alerting her body, that potential of hypervigilance, just knowing that now her grandson is also having issues. And I know the history of this area, so what's happening with my baby? Like, there's a lot, that polyvagal experience that's overtaking her, and then exacerbating the cortisol in her body, thus intensifying the presence of diabetes and the glaucoma. It's an avalanche that can actually be stopped, but the overimposing racism that then leads to the redlining that then causes the subsidy, it's a lot, but we can still find a solution nonetheless.
You just preached the whole word. I'm gonna have to stop right there. All right, Miss Michelle. Thank you, brother.
And to piggyback off what he just said, when I'm looking at this boyfriend intending to harm her, and does she have a history of abusive partners that contributed to that stress as well? So now you got, on top of that, you got to wondering if he's going to show up at the door, at any given time. How long has she been doing? How long has this pattern of abusive boyfriends been going on?
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Williams. And look, I don't want to wade into the fight on Twitter and TikTok, so y'all don't beat me up. I'm coming to you, Ms. Brantley, too. But I mean, just thinking about yes.
Oh no, I just wanted to piggyback off what she said. Because she has the history with like domestic violence, she's seen it growing up as well. So what did that upbringing look like for her?
I love it. Thank you, Ms. McPhee. This is what I'm going to say, though, and then I'm going to come to Ms. Brantley. So y'all don't get me. Y'all going to be like lighting me up in the evaluations. But If you recently saw, it was TikTok, the Black woman that refused to give her number to a Black man and he hit her in the face with a brick. I'm sorry, I don't mean to trigger people, but there's a lot of violence that happens in communities, Black men to Black women. And I'm not saying all Black men, so before y'all get me, and I'm not trying to wade into the Twitter fights, but Black women have an undue burden, again, of the threat of violence from Black men outside of relationship. It could be Black men that you don't know. And that's a historical kind of burden that Black women face oftentimes. Not everybody, again, I won't say that, but I just want to put that out there as a general, but I'm not trying, again, not all Black men. And I'm a Black man, I'm not trying to go there, but there's a threat of violence for Black women that just, the undercurrent of this lives and has lived for a long time. So that's not new. All right, Ms. Brantley, to you.
I was going to say, to that point that you just made and to Asia's point, one of the parts that also sticks out to me is her only daughter abandoned her. So when you talk about the generational stress and the generational trauma, it makes me wonder, was Mary abandoned by her mom, or what was her relationship like with her family? And what does, did she grow up in an abusive household? So some of those historical factors also made me wonder, does that then contribute to all of the symptoms that she's having that may be triggered by stress, but not just like from her life, from what she experienced with her parents or, whoever raised her?
Thank you. That's such a good point. And then Shaq and Miss Jenkins. And then we'll stop at that point. I'll let Miss Shaq and Miss Jenkins go, and then we'll stop there.
Christina literally said a lot of my thought pattern. Great minds. But I wanted to point out also the caveat to that with Mary's relationship with her daughter. What does that mother-daughter relationship look like in a Black household? Why did she abandon her? Was it a nurturing environment for her daughter? And is she dealing with some parental guilt in trying to assess and restructure that relationship with her grandson in doing all that she can to raise him? And is she depressed or upset with feeling like she was a failure as a parent and now she's failing as a grandparent with her grandson because he's acting out in school?
Y'all are bringing the whole bird. Thank you, Shaq. And now, Miss Jenkins, and I'll let you close out that part for us, Miss Jenkins.
Last but not least, what I was going to say, I know we're talking a lot about Mary herself, but also because one thing I have been learning a lot about is children. So we don't know how old her daughter's son is also. So that can kind of make it an extra burden, because dealing with children is its own separate, but they have certain developmental stages where some can be heightened more than others. So let's say like he's a preteen or going into his teenage years. That may be a lot more difficult for her to deal with, especially if that was something that she struggled dealing with her daughter with. So we don't know what, at what age her daughter may abandon her, or what age she started having issues with her daughter. But to the point of the grandson, and when we were talking about resources, is there anybody to help her? Is there a daycare? Is there something nearby? Because typically we have my grandma can watch the kid, or my aunt can watch this, or my next door neighbor can do this, but we don't know if that's the community she's in, period. So I think one thing to also kind of focus on is how she's dealing with the child, like Shaq said, and just how old the child is, like what's going on there, because on top of everything she has going on, she's, now responsible for a whole nother human being that's not really, her direct human being. So that can be a lot as well.
Thank you, Miss Jenkins. I appreciate that. Wow, that's real. So we're going to do, I'm not going to go through, because I know you all would be disruptors and not status quo with Mary. And then, but just think about it. We won't talk about power now, because I want you to be able to take a break, and then we'll do our last set of stuff so you can be done by noon. All right. So let's take a 10-minute break. So come back at 11:08. And we'll go. So go get some water, do some self-care, stretch, and then we'll do our power close to the finish at 11:08.
Okay. Let me see. They got this new thing where you could put a clock up.
Oh, I love that.
I gotta find it.
I'll stop sharing. I was like, can you do it with me,
Keep going. I gotta find it. I did a training. Now I can't find it. Here it is. Is it showing it? All right.
Yep. I said, oh, that's so neat. You taught me something new. I did not know that. So I'm about to do.
Yeah, you gotta update it in your in the Zoom or something.
I love that. I need to. Okay, I didn't know it was gonna take so long. I'm sorry. I was like, Lord, I'm gonna be. I got us bogged down in another part. We ain't talking that one bit about interprofessional. So we're back. Now we're going to do the real heart of our matter to talk about interprofessional collaboration that all of you have been waiting for. All right. So again, you've seen many different definitions, and these are the definitions for it. It comes up interprofessional education, collaborative practice, teamwork, team-based care. But there's an urgent need for all of us to work together, allied health professionals, to create new models of care for our clients, and especially in Black spaces, because we're seeing, again, anti-Blackness is rampant in healthcare. And so it's going to be important for Black allied health practitioners to collaborate and infuse this with more anti-Black practices, infuse it with radical healing and stuff that we know from Black communities that help people heal. And I really believe that a lot of things that help Black people heal help other people heal too. We can apply to other people. It's not just a Black thing. They just don't think about it that way because they ain't Black. They're not us, right? So, but there's some real other gifts that come with this too. You know, we get to collaborate with other professionals, as you're seeing in this workshop, and we get to work closely with clients, families, and communities. So it's a two-pronged kind of collaboration, and it can improve the care that clients receive and our other colleagues receive. And so that's why we really emphasize this for this grant. And that's why I'm glad you're doing this, because again, you're going to be cutting edge. Some other gifts from this is that potential benefits, since you don't have to do it all by yourself and it's not all on your shoulders, we should be able to decrease errors in healthcare, misdiagnosis, et cetera, because we'll have all our thinking hats on as counselors and social workers and everybody else. We should be able to increase equitable healthcare, we hope. Hopefully we'll decrease costs because they won't have to go, like Mary doesn't have to go to 5 doctors into the emergency room to get psychiatric care. We could do it as a team-based model so we can all do it together. So hopefully they'll make it more cost efficient, and it'll make it more efficient for Mary so she doesn't have to go get all the appointments in different places. She could do it all at one time, right? So these are some of the potential gifts that come with interprofessional collaboration. The history of it, just a little bit. In 2009, 6 national education associations of schools of health joined to make this dialogue. And now I think social work and counseling both have joined as well. So I think there's 16 or maybe 20 groups now, but in 2009, it started with 6 groups. And this was kind of the idea, is that as you grow the learning continuum pre-licensure to practice trajectory, you learn these things. It's going to be community and population oriented and patient and family centered. And based on these 4 things: interprofessional communication practices, roles and responsibilities for collaboration, values and ethics for interprofessional practice, and interprofessional teamwork and team-based practice. And so in these ways, we hope to make the experience better for clients in general, but of course we're at Clark Atlanta, so we hope we're going to make it better for Black clients. And that's our goal. How do we infuse our Blackness into all these things we're learning? And again, social work, you're Afrocentric already. We're bringing it into counseling, and Dr. G is Afrocentric, so she got it in there too. But you know, many counseling programs aren't, and many social work programs aren't. So again, I know you may take it for granted as we joke about it, but you're going to be a lot different than many other practitioners in the field, and you'll see it when you go to conferences and everything else as well. All right, so here are the 4 competencies that I promised you that you would learn today. So we'll go through it. Competency 1, you're going to work with individuals of other professions to maintain a climate of mutual respect and shared values. And these are the sub-competencies that go with competency 1. And I know my head is in the way, so I'm moving my head. So as you look at these sub-competencies, what are the themes that come up for you? Jessica.
That the patient is the #1 priority.
Yeah, right. And we always want to make sure our patient and clients, our communities are the #1 priority as we do this work. That's why we're doing this work. I mean, I want you to get paid and everything else, but the clients are the most important thing. Miss Jenkins.
One thing alongside with the client being the priority, because that's very important. I think one that stood out to me that I think a lot of people take for granted is develop a trusting relationship with the patients, the family, and other team members. And especially developing a trusting relationship with the patients, because you can't get the work done if the patient doesn't trust you. And it's very hard to get the work done because that's what we're there for. So yeah, if the patient does not trust you, if you don't have a good rapport, if they feel like they're not essentially safe or in a safe space, it'll be very, very hard to help them in the ways that they need to be helped. Especially for a prime example, if you don't have a good rapport with the client, they can't tell you how they would like to be helped or what they may need help with. And that's our main priority. So that's one thing I would say.
You better preach, Miss Jenkins. So basically what Miss Jenkins is saying is pay attention to your classes, all those classes that tell you how to do rapport development with your clients. Please pay attention to them. All right. Check.
One that stuck out for me, it was two, but I'll just do one. Was embrace the cultural diversity and individual differences that characterize patients, populations, and the health team. And the reason that stuck out to me is because no Black person or no person is the same. And a lot of times we have implicit biases when it comes to specific cultures and what we think may be the problem, instead of getting to know the person and listening to what their exact problem is.
That's important. Yes. Listen, this person that may be racialized Black in front of you does have challenges, right? But it's not just about their Blackness. They have specific problems, and we need to listen to that and really do our treatment planning around that. So thank you, Shaq. That's important. All right. I'm going to do, all of y'all got your hands up. Okay. But I'm going to have to just do one. I'll go Michelle, and then Katie and Miss Vines and Dorian. Save it for our next one, please. I want you to be first up on our next one. I promise. So we can get through it, and you won't be here all day. All right, Katie. No, Michelle, and then Katie, I'll have you come next.
Okay, the importance of the respect and collaboration with the team members that are treating the family or the person, because one thing that I know that clients find frustrating is telling their story over and over again to different team members. But if we collaborate on the front end, and we are all familiar with the client and the person and environment and all that, we're all familiar with that. So when the client comes, the client doesn't have to retell their story in order to get the services that they need.
Yes, that's so important. And having respect among each other too. And I hope you haven't seen this in your internship yet, but I've been in spaces where there was much more competitiveness, like the social workers and counselors, right? And I hated that. Or counselors and teachers, or doctors and social workers and doctors and counselors, right? Because the doctors like to be the top of the hierarchy because they get more money and they get trained longer and harder, blah, 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 right? And so they talk down to us and those kind of things as well. And so that mutual respect for your profession and for your clients' patients is very important. And so, yeah, and I like what you said, Michelle. If we're working on the front end to have rapport and mutual respect and work on our roles, then hopefully that shows up for our clients as well. All right, so let's go to the next one, and then I'll have Katie and Miss Vines and whoever else start out on this one if something bubbles up for you here. All right, number 2, use the knowledge of one's own role and those of other professions to appropriately assess and address the healthcare needs of patients and to promote and advance the health of populations. Now, these are the sub-competencies for competency 2. I'll move my head again. So what stands out for you, or what bubbles up for you as you see the sub-competencies for 2? All right, Miss Vines.
So I guess for me, just glancing over them all, community and the importance of a group. So I know that sometimes when you are collaborating with other professionals, being mindful of everyone's strengths and weaknesses and where people's specialties lie, and knowing where people can show up and where people will feel more comfortable shying away and letting other people do their thing, in a sense. So I think that's really important here, especially me, because I plan to work in a collaboratively with other clinicians. So just being understanding that, you know, you don't always have to be right, and it's really just about the client and what they have going on, and making sure that that goal is met. So just being mindful of community and strengths and weaknesses.
Thank you. All right, Miss Vines. All right, Miss Washington. Come on.
I actually just wanted to piggyback off of that from Ms. Vines, because I'm working in the field. I also have my internship as a therapist as well. And one of my clients is on the spectrum, and he also has IEP, was its intermittent explosive disorder. And sharing that with my my cohort and also with my supervisor, I was like, okay, I can't do this. The recognizing one limitation in skills and knowledge, because I don't have the experience in ABA. So we did refer that client to ABA specialties, because I didn't know I can only deal with one thing. I didn't know how to deal with on the spectrum. Let me just say that. But that's just want to piggyback on what Ms. Vine said.
Thank you for that too. And that's real. And thank you for being honest about that too. Because I think many of us, I mean, we got all this education, we think we could do it all. And knowing the scope of our practice and the limits of our knowledge, that's something that's very ethical and responsible for you to say, I don't have any training for this, so I need to refer you out. And it's not a client failing, it's not even a practitioner failing. That's just not my area of expertise. So let's collaborate with somebody who does have that expertise to make sure you get the services you need. So thank you, Ms. Washington. And Ms. Vine, y'all bringing it. All right, Katie, Ms. Barber, are you about to bring it too? The last.
I was just going to say, like, in terms of engaging diverse professionals, I think like bringing in the perspective of CASA workers or people who can do life skills coaching with certain clients, you know, just really diverse practices. Sometimes we just need to connect clients with resources of like getting hair done. I think self-esteem is a big part of the things that I do for clients. And just like the small things that we take for granted, connecting clients with so they can get specific clothes that they need for certain spaces. Those are just really important, but they don't always look like counseling, I guess.
Oh, I like that. You bring up another good point too. Like some of the work that you're doing may not look like you sitting down doing talk therapy. It could be resource gathering, some of the other things we talked about, some of the ways that you help their community and their context. And so that's important as well. So thank you, Katie. You're the truth. All right, let's go on then. This is competency 3. You communicate with patients, families, communities, and professionals in health and other fields in a responsive and responsible manner that supports a team approach to the promotion and maintenance of health and the prevention and treatment of disease. And these are the sub-competencies that go with competency 3. And, let me get my head out of the way again. As you look at these sub-competencies, what comes up for you, or what themes do you see? Miss Pratt, and then Shaq.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say use respectful language appropriate for a given difficult situation, crucial conversation, or conflict. I think this is very important because it might be a client that we're dealing with that we might not agree with, you know, what they are going through. And we just have to always remember to be respectful with them, and still, you know, even if our own ethical dilemmas may arise, we have to still treat them with dignity and respect, and, you know, just be mindful of that.
Oh, yes. Thank you. That's so important to remember. Treat your clients with dignity and respect, communicate respectfully, honor their humanity. Yes. Shaq, did I see you? Did I see your hand, Shaq?
Yes, you did. But
okay.
I was like, I'm talking too much. Let me put my
I know. Keep talking, Shaq. Keep talking. This practice from when you're Dr. Shaq.
I definitely said listen actively and encourage ideas and opinions of other team members. Dr. Johnson, when our first class, really honed in on active listening skills with us. So I feel like I take that with me in my personal life and in my professional life? Like, am I really actively listening to what this person is saying and digesting and taking in what they're saying instead of thinking of a response? I'm just listening to what they're saying and what they need. Even when it comes to other people that I'm working with and what they need as well, and not just the client.
Thank you for that. I love that. And that's a good point. Active listening, being respectful, communicate respect. But also, I think I'll add this, it's not there. If we're thinking in Black spaces too, and I know all Black communities don't use same dialects and everything else, I'm not trying to say that, but using appropriate language for the communities in which we're serving as well. Sometimes it's great that we have our highfalutin educated language. and I know that, but a lot of times some of our families and communities are not going to understand that. So we have to make it developmentally appropriate and, and language appropriate as well in those ways too. Because it's easy. I want us to speak our language because that's what you're getting trained to do, but also being able to modify it as we need it for our clients and families. All right. And then competency 4.
Can I add something to that?
Oh, yes. Yes, Dr. Jones.
Have you ever heard this piece where you should keep like a 6th grade level of language? So it's like, as much as you may want to be like, oh, this is parsimonious, like you really do want to kind of keep things, and like you want to think about like the newspaper, which I know we don't receive the newspapers anymore, but I think there was an article written that anything that comes out like from the New York Post or anything is written at a 6th grade reading level so that anybody should be able to pick it up. So I kind of try to keep that in mind when you think about your clients, is that you're not dumbing it down, but if you keep it really to the basic part, and then you can always kind of add stuff to it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That is true. Because I do think, and you are getting all educated at CAU, which is one exceptional institution. So you're going to want to use your 25-cent words.
Right.
It's just not, and you've earned that. But it's just, it doesn't always work in our settings for our clients and our communities, because they got to look at us. Sometimes it works if you're in the well-educated, highly affluent sections of our communities, but for some other parts of our communities, we just need to make it where they understand and not put a barrier through the language that we've chosen. I appreciate that. All right, this is competency 4. Apply relationship building values and the principles of team dynamics to perform effectively in different team roles, to plan, deliver, evaluate patient population-centered care and population health programs and policies that are safe, timely, efficient, effective, and equitable. All right, and so I got to say, social workers and counselors, I think maybe, well, we don't have an MFT program at CAU, but I think they get it at MFT. And maybe some psychologists are the only practitioners that are really trained in group and doing group delivery as far as group counseling, group therapy. So this is very unique for us because public health practitioners don't have this. Doctors are not trained in this. It's social workers, counselors, a few psychologists, marriage and family therapists, but nobody else really does this. So you have some skills that many other people don't have. You bring this to the table just from your curriculum and your practice. So you get to own that and honor that as well. All right. But outside of that, here are the sub competencies that come with the group dynamic stuff. And let me get my big head out of the way. And as you look through this, what kind of themes or what thoughts come up for you? Miss Vines.
So what comes to mind first would be Sankofa.
Oh,
just off the strength of the quote. Just being mindful that the more specialties, the more strengths that you have around you, the further you can go. You can go faster by yourself, but who's to say that it's getting every angle? That's why I do want to provide the medium that I do with multiple specialties, because you never know, who has a better idea, who has a better way of conveying something. So I definitely took that into consideration. And then also teaching that to clients, the importance of relationships and the things that they have going on, and being able to navigate those as well.
Come on, come through. I was like, I'm feeling moved. I might have to go march. All right, good brother Nelson, future Dr. Quinones.
Thank you, sir, Dr. Shell. So this entire slide right here of subcompetency reads interprofessional collaboration. Bam. However, the one that does stand out to me where it reiterates our input regarding interprofessional collaboration is engage self and others to constructively manage disagreements about values, roles, and goals, and actions that arise among health and other professionals. We got to be willing to look at the nitty-gritty, the opposing sides. We've got to be willing to look at what we talked about earlier, those impositions from society, those cultural norms that we still hold on to that are clearly not supportive anymore. Even our religious beliefs that are still infusing toxic beliefs into our homes. Like, we have to be willing to look at those things and how they impact how we eat, how they impact how we handle our finances, and then communicate that or cascade that into the treatment planning, and then include that with some healing traditions. This whole thing just reads, I hold your hand, you hold my hand, we shake hands, we make things happen.
Ooh, wow. Y'all got me feeling inspired. This is a good cohort, Dr. Jones, Dr. Giddings. Woo, I'm coming back to Clark. Miss Jenkins, come on now.
To piggyback a little bit off what Ms. Vine said earlier, since we're, our focus is interprofessional development and connection, one thing, they all stood out, but one thing that stood out the most was sharing accountability, right? So we can't tell our clients to be accountable or hold themselves accountable if we don't do the same. So when I was working at an agency before, we're not gonna get into that, but there was a time where we were all collaborating on a treatment plan, and someone had, made us mishap on the treatment plan. And it took us so long to actually get the treatment plan to the client and do things, because we were all sitting there like, who's doing this? Who messed up? Where did this come from? And the one person, just didn't have I don't want to say the courage, but essentially the courage to say, hey, that was my mishap on my department. Let's see how we can fix this to better help the client. So it took us so much longer to serve the client because we were literally just trying to go over a treatment plan over and over and over again. So being accountable and saying, hey, you know what? I thought this may have been the best for the client. It wasn't. How do we work together to fix this? Or can we work together to fix this? Is something, sometimes you have to look bigger than yourself. Like someone said earlier, it's more than just about yourself. Essentially, the client is the main priority. So holding yourself accountable, like, hey, you know what? Maybe this wasn't the best option. Let's find the better one. So that was one that stood out as well.
Ooh, thank you. Yeah, being able to admit when we're wrong, hold ourselves accountable, and bring that to the table as well. And I know that gets dicey sometimes when we're with our other professionals. They're like, what's your training? You sure you're a real counselor? You sure you're a real social worker? But we have to be able to admit when we make mistakes and go back and fix it, right? Because that's going to help our clients. But also we get to model that for our clients. So if they make mistakes, they won't be embarrassed to come back and share it with us. That's part of our goal as well. Katie, and then Tracy, and then Bobby.
Just to the point of what Brittany said, just focusing on the use of professional improvement in that process, like outside of audits, like when people come in and they're looking at the work that we're doing in terms of, are we meeting those treatment goals? Are we doing what we're supposed to do? Also looking at are we collaborating properly and meeting those needs in the way that we're supposed to, rather than just checking off boxes.
I like that. Thank you. Tracy, and then Bobby.
Hello. So my practicum is at Grady, and within Grady is a bunch of it's a bunch of different professions. But my supervisor says this. She's like, even within social work, we are one band, one sound. And even when you're working with other professionals, but when you're working with other professionals to help one client or a group of clients, then we're still one band, one sound, even if it's a bunch of different professions, because the ultimate goal is to help out the client. It's not a competition. It's not a pissing contest to see who knows more, who ranks higher. It should be a partnership, and it should be a team.
Yes. Thank you for that. Thank you. I'm going to come back and talk about that too. And then Bobby.
Yes, I just wanted to talk more about the TT3, the Engage in Health and Other Professionals and Shared Patient Center. And that whole thing. I know I had an experience at my last practicum where there was a social worker and she was talking about LPCs. She was just like, I don't like them. And I could have easily took on that whole persona she had. And I just noticed it wasn't patient-centered. It wasn't focused on just focusing on the person we're trying to help. I feel like a lot of times people just have a lot of different views on other professions. You'll hear even a doctor or a nurse talk about each other. And it's just that is where you get, what other people say, when you get stuck on yourself, you get stuck with your ego and you just focus on yourself, the patient and the client really just suffers a lot. So that's why I love this whole program. I love the interpersonal collaboration part because this is really important. And I feel like when you don't have a group and when you don't work together, you don't get the job done.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. It is, and I've seen that too. Like both ways, some LPCs are like, well, LCSWs don't really know how to do therapy, and then some, you know, and that's why it was important when Dr. Jones and I sat down, because we don't have that kind of contention. We know the profession can be that way, and our professions sometimes do, but we're cousins more so than, you know, we don't do things exactly the same way, but we have, in the end, we want the clients to grow and heal, and we want them to be okay. And so can we lean into that rather than like LPCs? Wow, who are y'all? LCSWs, who y'all? Who do that? Right? Who you do that at? So you bring up a good point.
I've only learned more. Like I've only gained from it. So I
Yeah.
find it to be like, I don't like it as an African American woman when we take on oppressive behavior. Like sometimes you'll hear other African men, oh, they got an EDD, they don't have a PhD. Like we don't need to do that. We got too many other people that's out here giving us the critique. So we need to be more on the same side. So I'm glad, Bobby, that you shared that. I'm glad that you have the mindset to be open, all of you, because I'm sure that people talk slick in the streets, you know, or just out here, you know, people talking. And we really do need to be that ally to each other. And I hope that you can spread that to your colleagues in your classroom as well as within the profession, because it is real, and it is something that I think Dr. Shell and I both, and Dr. Giddens too, we feel passionately about. Like I've only gained, I've only learned more. So
I have too. I've only gained, especially because even at Clark being there, you know, knowing that the social work program is Afrocentric, that's helped me think about how to teach counseling and change the way the counseling curriculum looks. And so I've only gained as well. And so I hate to hear it professionally, but I know there's turf wars out there, and that's sad. And people get entrenched in that and they can't see past it sometimes. But it's so important that you do this work, like Dr. Jones was saying, because we don't have enough Black practitioners, and we can't oppress each other in that way, because there's so many clients that are coming that need us, right? And there's not enough of us to do it. And so the only way we're going to be able to do this work and do it well for our Black communities and Black clients are to do interprofessional collaboration. And so that's how this grant came about, because we're like, there's so much need and not enough of us. And how are we going to do this if we don't? Sankofa, I love it. I'm going to use that slide anyway. I stole it, so it's going to be in there. But if we're not holding hands and walking together, how are we going to make the changes we want to see for mental health in our Black communities? We just can't do it. So thank you all for that. A couple of more things and it'll be ready to be done, I promise. I'm going to I want to talk a little bit about realism, about some barriers that do show up from the research that we could see, that we've seen.
Tracy has her hand up. I'm not sure if
I'm sorry. Go, Tracy. Yes.
Okay.
I just forgot to lower it from earlier. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was like, I'm so sorry.
Better. We just making sure. We didn't want to disclude anybody.
And what we're trying to help you as you go out and proselytize about too is just to really think about some of the barriers that are coming. So thankfully, Clark has this grant. So we have some financial kind of power to help get you money to help do this work, and thinking about that too. But the accountability, as people were pointing out, it does get kind of dicey out there. As Ms. Jenkins was saying, like reimbursement, losing reimbursement, whose rates are higher, and then the hierarchy. And if we're going to be real again, if you're working in many of these medical spaces, doctors are at the top of the hierarchy for many reasons, and they act that way too. So we meet some doctors who are collaborative and want to listen to your feedback as counselors and social workers, but sometimes we don't, because they're doctors and they think they're all that, and they often are. I don't want to say all doctors, but sometimes it's hard, and so you're going to have to own the turf in these spaces too, and know your social work identity, know your counseling identity, and know how it shows up in the space, and not in a way to beat them over the head with it, just to make sure that the clients are being seen holistically and they get everything they need. All right. And then again, and you all talked about it, Nelson, Tracy, everybody, barriers at the team level, clearly stated, shared, measurable purpose. If you know you're there for the client, training, which you're all doing. But again, everybody is not trained on interprofessional collaboration. So you're ahead of the curve. So I hope you put this in your resume when you're going out. I hope you talk about it in your interviews, how this is helping you think about it. team members who committed, and then your decision-making process. And then, you know, just as Bobby was pointing out, am I loyal to my profession or to the team, right? Because you're representing both, and that is pretty hard. So it's really owning the turf, but also understanding how to communicate and talk through differences, as Nelson was saying as well. Owning our own biases and hopefully keeping that out of the way, and then being open to feedback from different professions. Because again, social workers and counselors do things differently, but ultimately we want to help our clients to grow. So if it's all about that, then how do we incorporate that both into both of those ideas? And then thinking about our process and how we're going to grow together. So that's just some of the barriers that are out there that this grant is going to help overcome. And we were going to do one more practice, but it's almost 11:40, so we won't. Well, it's going to have you think about, though. We'll think about it, but we won't have time to practice it because it'll be time to close down. But thinking about using your counselor hat, your social work hat, your school counselor hat, and if for those of you, if there's anybody who's a school social worker in the group, think about how would you work together to help Mary in her case with her grandson and get things done. And so I'll take, I know you're thinking about it now, but I'll take a couple of suggestions if anybody has some ideas first, because we won't have time to break down into our small groups. So if you want to be willing to be brave in front of everybody and throw out what you think as from your lens, how you would do it. Or what you bring from your lens, or what you bring as, say, a counselor or a school counselor to a discussion about Mary's case. So from your specific role to the team, what would you do? Shaq.
I'll brave it. As a school counselor, my main client would be the grandson, but of course, his grandmother, Miss Mary, is an extension of him. So, you know, I would, first of all, I'm where I'm housed at right now for my internship. We have 2 school counselors, 2 school social workers, 2 school psychologists, and because it's an elementary and a middle school. So we all kind of come in as a team, and we have team meetings every week.
Oh, yes.
So yes. So what I would do is since I know the background already, I would present this to them in a collaborative effort and talk with them about what barriers, you know, our student is facing, and how can we assist a grandmother so our student can be successful as well. For behavior, of course, we would have to, you know, refer to the school psychologist. I would refer resources and needs to the school social worker. As the school counselor, I would implement mediations or every other week meetings with him to talk about behaviors and the things that he's facing and things like that. And we also have 2 in-school therapists from Chris 180, so I will refer services out to them as well, and also talk about what the client will be needing based upon what the school psychologist says for their evaluation. Get into MTSS and SSTI level meetings and things like that based upon with the special education person at our school as well. So based upon the students' needs. And so I'm kind of hitting it from a 2-generation approach because I'm referring them out because our school social worker does home visits as well, and referring them to the resources. And then I'm talking to him. And also I would, after we have our level team meeting and we see what the diagnosis is, see what the needs are, if there is one, or work on the behaviors, I will also meet with his grade level teachers and the assistant principal for his grade level and talk about some implementations with the MTSS level specialists and things like that to work with them on what he would need specifically in the classroom so he's not disrupting the learning environment.
Yes, Shaq, you're very thorough about your role. You're going to be a fantastic school counselor. Thank you. I can't wait to see how your school's going to improve when you're in there. Because yes, Shaq, I mean, I'm not surprised, but I'm just listening to you like, wow, you're grown up. You're a full-on school counselor. I was like, wow. So thank you for that. But you see how you think about it from her role. She's talking about collaboration, but And then, as Ms. Vines has said, and some other people before, she's talking about her gifts and what she brings to the table. So thinking about that. And now I'll go to Ms. Vines. Thank you, Shaq.
I would take somewhat of a similar role, but my main focus would be Miss Mary. I think my role would look more of like a clinical case management in this sense, because I do see that Miss Mary is older than me. So I would be my first move with her would be trying to make sure that everything on that medical and health aspect is on point before we get her situated with someone in the age appropriate lane that could dedicate to all of her needs in that age range, that place and time in life, and all of those things. As well as seeing what the grandson may need in his own thing. I probably wouldn't working with them directly after that first intake situation, but I will be checking with them periodically to make sure that the severity of things have lessened and that the quality of care that they're receiving is still up to par, to see if there's any adjustments that need to be made, possibly with the support from the grandson or maybe Mary, and then also finding out a way that we could possibly sever that relationship or repair that relationship with that mother, seeing how we can, just dictate to all those things, but from a more overall standpoint, and just rather just kind of facilitating things, making sure that everything is taken care of.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Vines. I love that. That's helped me think about this differently too. So look, y'all are all professionals. Lord, Ms. Jenkins, can you top that? And then we'll come to Katie. Katie, you'll be our last voice in this. So we'll come to Ms. Jenkins. Can you top it, Ms. Jenkins?
We're gonna hope so. I'm gonna do the. Sorry, I didn't know my camera was off. No, we're gonna hope so. I'm gonna do the best I can. So I'm kind of all over the place. Mine's is gonna be a little all over the place.
I love it.
So I'm gonna base mine off of what I kind of do now. I'm an intern therapist at Family Ties. So what they have me doing, we're split. So you can be, in community engagement, or you can be in the schools. And Dr. Ray would probably kill me right now because I said I didn't want any kids. I didn't want to be in the schools. I wasn't doing it. And that's right where I'm at. So when I do go, so like Shaq was saying, to start off, I would more so be assigned to her grandson, since I am working in schools right now. So when I would hold sessions with him. Normally I hold sessions with my students in the school. So I go to the schools to visit them. So I have about an hour or so to actually spend time with them. But afterwards, there's a social worker in the school. So periodically I meet with the social worker and we just, review things that are going on and, within ethical rights. But one thing that is like primary, or it's necessary that we have to send a referral every session. A community referral or anything of that nature that can better aid the client or the student. So one thing I would do then is, knowing that, there is something that is going on at home, or that is his primary caregiver, I probably send out a referral to the social worker of something that they can do together, something that the grandmother and the grandson can do together. And that's kind of how I would tie them into each other. And then eventually I would have conversations with the grandmother. And if she is referred to me, I would also be able to see the grandmother, which would help a little bit because it would help me navigate the relationship with her grandson as well. And seeing both of them, and then I can require that they have some sessions together outside of a school environment. And then on Mary's side, I would be able to work with an outside social worker, not the school social worker, to try to provide alternative options for her as well. So things that we were talking about earlier, just based off of the things that we discussed. Just trying to get her transportation, a reliable doctor, better food options, things like that. That's something that I would talk to an additional social worker with after having my own conversations with Mary, if that is something that we pursue. But initially, I would start with her grandson and do referrals from there.
You the bomb. Let me unmute. And then thank you, Ms. Jenkins. You really could bring it. All right, I see that. And now, last but not least, Katie, you'll be our last voice in this. Where are you going, Miss Katie?
So let me see here. With Mary being my primary client at the time, If she comes in, I want to get her for a BHA, get her in for a BHA, universal assessment. I want to get a case history of that story and how that goes. Based off that, I also want to get her in for some med management so we can get a past history from all those other psychiatric visits, hospital visits, see what she's been taking, and also get her in with psychiatry so we can regulate that medication, see what she needs to taper off of, what she needs to be on. From that, she needs to do some further assessments. I see she's got maybe like major depressive disorder, anxiety. So she's going to have to do 2 separate assessments for those, maybe like on a monthly basis. We want to keep track of those. And then in terms of service plan development, it is all about her, but also if she's the primary caregiver for the client, I want to make sure that that's like from a legal standpoint, that's when I bring in the caseworker. So I want to get the information from the caseworker, get ROIs from schools, from hospitals. In terms of doing that treatment plan, there'll be goals for her, but also goals in terms of family sessions, individual sessions, to bring in grandson, because there may be things that they need to work through. If the daughter's still in her life, but maybe not specifically in that parental role, that she can come in for some sessions for family sessions, building those connections. What else? Oh, also resource linkage, like I said, in terms of caseworkers and other like interprofessionals, getting her needs in terms of like geriatric care, making sure there's no abuse there, getting incident reports put in. She's mentioned, several counts of abuse in terms of the ex-boyfriend, and things in that nature. And I think I would just go from there. I want to get some narrative therapy in, break down the facts of the situation, the feelings of the situation, and then her re-story, what she wants it to look like, from 62 there on, both for herself and for the grandson. So I think that's where I'd go.
Oh, the bomb. I love that. I'm looking at the chat too, at all the information, family stuff. Can't forget the mom because she might be experiencing MDD because of losing custody of her son. That's true, major depressive disorder. And the background between the mom and the daughter. So thank you for all bringing your thoughts in here. Y'all are going to be some good clinicians. This is going to be a good year of internship. They're getting the best that CAU can bring. Yes. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'll take it down a notch. Thank you all for sharing and sharing from your lens and being willing to be vulnerable and risk takers. We would have done a big activity, but I took too long. So we would have divided you into groups of 4 and let you talk about this case together and plan together. But a lot of you are sitting in your internship spaces and everything else. And so you're already practiced. It's just a matter of you thinking as you go out on the job market again, really emphasizing your ability to do this in a professional collaboration. Because not only are you doing it, but you're actually getting extra training to do it too. And so y'all are the bomb. I'm going to come sit on your couch when I need all the help, because I need a lot of help. All right. Hey. Here a couple of things, and we'll go. I want to say, and you all know this too, we're asking you to do a lot. Interprofessional collaboration. Many of you have chosen to work with Black folks because this is where your heart is. It comes with a lot of gifts. It also comes with a lot of challenges. So make sure, and I know it sounds like at this point, we always say self-care, self-care, self-care. And it always sounds like, why they always talking about self-care? And they still keep giving me more assignments to do. And they keep trying to make me do another paper, right? But when you get out there, really it's going to be important because we think about secondary traumatic stress a lot. So you're going to hear a lot of trauma from your Black clients, and that kind of sticks to you, whether you want it to stick to you or not. And in addition to hearing it, you'll be living some of the things that they're living as well. So you get a twofer. You're living through the anxieties and stuff of society, and they're bringing it to you in your sessions. One of the gifts that we have as Black clinicians is that we want to work with Black folks. So that kind of helps mitigate secondary traumatic stress and burnout for us because we're in our element. But what we're seeing from a lot of folks too, now they're being overwhelmed. They wanted to help Black folks, and now Black folks are coming and they're having too many clients and their caseloads are big and they have to say no, and it's just bringing a lot of stress. So it's just going to be really important for you to really take in the yoga next week, all the ways that you reclaim joy in your life. So however you reclaim joy, if that's going to the cookout, if that's dancing, if that's poetry, if that's taking a hike, making sure that you do the things that help you to reclaim joy for you, because this work is important. You're important, but also we don't want to lose you in this process, right? And the other thing is I tout myself, let me just, tout myself. The other thing we're seeing too, though, is for Black folks who are doing this kind of work, and we looked at Black social workers, counselors, marriage and family therapists, and psychologists, when they're reporting racism, they're also reporting burnout at higher rates, and they're also reporting secondary traumatic stress. And secondary traumatic stress for clinicians looks just like PTSD. You get the whole same symptoms: hyperarousal, you lose sleep, you don't focus at work, depression kind of shows up, those kind of things as well. So, and Lauren was a graduate student in the program. But anyway, so we have research out there that shows racism for Black clinicians really causes issues. And so I just want to, so if you need to cite somebody, cite me so I can get some more citations so I can get tenure again. Anyway, but I also say that not to be bragging, I promise you, is that we need you as you go out there to do this kind of work. Like people had theorized this stuff about burnout and racism before, but nobody had actually done the study. And so it's all white supremacists for me to be like, I'm first, because it's not like that. I stood on the backs of my forebears who had already theorized it. I just went ahead and created the study. But we need you to go out there and do the study, these kind of stuff, because we don't know what impacts Black practitioners because our professions haven't thought it was important enough to do that kind of study before, right? And so we're still learning what looks like burnout for Black practitioners, what looks like high stress for Black practitioners. We don't know. And so it often gets turned into a bad word, me search, right? It's a pejorative. You're doing me search. That's not generalized. I'm just encouraging you to go out there and do the research that matters to you, because we need it. We need more stuff about how does it show up for Black women? How does it show up for Black queer folks? How does it show up for Black disabled folks? The research doesn't exist. A lot of it doesn't exist. And so we need you to go do that as well. For those of you who want to be researchers, all of you don't want to, so I don't want to impose that on you. I get it. That class is hard. You're tired of it. But for those of you who want to, we need you to go research the things you're interested in, because if you're interested in Black issues, we don't have enough research out there for this. We always talk about evidence-based practice. We don't have a lot of evidence-based practice that's grounded in Blackness, that's rooted in the ways that we heal, in our traditional ways of healing. So please go out there and do that, please. All right. And the last thing, the reason interprofessional collaboration is very important because it's a part of our cultural tradition, right? And so, as Dr. Jones has pointed out, and I know they use this in social work all the time. I like to steal it and say we use it in counseling too, but it's a part of our cultural tradition. So, as a Black practitioner, you're using your cultural traditions to come in and do this work to help Black communities, right? So, interprofessional collaboration is all about us going together and not going alone. And so that's it. And so I want to say, because it's almost 5 minutes till, we won't do takeaways, just think through takeaways, but thank you. Any comments you have that you want to share for our last 5 minutes? I know they have to do announcements, and you can find me here at emshellccsu.edu. It's been such a joy talking to you and hearing your ideas and your thoughts. And then Dorian and Jessica, I'm gonna let y'all be talking. I love it. Keep going.
Do you have to leave? Can you come back just to visit? Like,
I'm coming to visit soon.
Come on, please. Don't sell the house. You already have a place to rest in here. We know you can get your job. You know,
like with no explanation.
We need you here
like,
as a professor.
Oh, so sweet. Don't make
like
me
when
cry.
are you? When
We'll
are
apply
we
for
going
the
to be taking your
research grants
class?
for you. We'll do it all. Come on.
Listen, come
Come on. We'll do what you need us to do.
I love it. I love it.
So, Dr. Shell, when are you coming back? Monday, or you'll be back? What, this week or next week?
I'm hopping on the plane. I got you.
One day a week, like
I got you. I got you. I'm coming back.
Do you all see why I said what I said? Do you see what I said? What I said when I introduced him?
Yes. Yes, Dr. Gibbs. We need Dr. Shell back. Yes, ma'am.
He's awesome.
Y'all are the bomb.
We can do virtual as well.
We can do virtual.
You know, you can teach a class as an adjunct virtually. You know?
I'll be like all about the virtual. Y'all be tired of me then. Like, Ken, you said that story yet again.
We won't.
I appreciate you all.
It. Well, let's give Dr. Shell a round of applause. Keep the things going. I know for me as a professor, that's probably better than a check. Now I need my check.
It is.
But to hear that type of love, I think is like what you do it for. You just want to make sure you're doing it right. So I knew Dr. Shell would bring it. How many times have we had to call him Miss Campbell? Let's put it out on Front Street. Damn. When I tell you I was almost gonna drive to Connecticut and get Dr. Giddens to be my co-pilot.
Yes.
It was like, we getting it.
Absolutely.
And then she had to put the baby on the phone. We put in work. But we knew it would be worth it. We knew it would be worth it.
I love y'all. You know, I love this grant too. I was coming. I'm slow. It's the beginning of the semester. I'm struggling.
I think I even was gonna say something on Instagram, and I was like, let me leave it alone.
You should have put it on Instagram. I love it. Look, Miss Brantley talking about a rent party. I need it. I need the rent party. I need that student loan repayment party.
I'm holding out to the last minute that he's gonna be like, hey y'all, I know Christmas is coming, so I'm gonna give you 6 more months. If he want my vote, like, I hate
right?
to on the brother.
I love it.
We need to talk. But thank you all. Thank you all. I'm gonna drop in. We have a survey. It's like 10 questions. I don't even know if it's that many questions. But this is where it's a training grant. So what we try to do is train. And so we want to see if there's opportunities for improvement or things that we have as successes. So I put the link there. And then let me see, I'm gonna open up that Canvas page and I'm gonna let Miss